My name is Chase Hassan, and this is my informative speech for Speech 110. This is a speech on tsunamis. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunamis killed over 230,000 people in 14 different countries. To put that in perspective, the population of the Monroe metropolitan area is around 170,000 people. The population of Ruston is around 22,000 people. So this tragic event that happened the day after Christmas in 2004 killed more people than the population of Monroe and Ruston combined. The term tsunami is of Japanese origin and literally means harbor wave. Tsunamis are a series of large waves that are caused by displacement of water in the ocean. Although they are referred to as waves, they do not resemble the breaking waves as you would see along a beach. They are more like a very rapid rising of the tide. Because of this, they are also sometimes called tidal waves. They also come in series of waves and not just one big wave. In 426 BC, the Greek historian Thucydides was the first to suggest that tsunamis were caused by oceanic earthquakes. We now know that these waves can be caused by a number of different things. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, landslides, and even meteorite impacts can trigger them, although seismic activity is the most common cause. The way an earthquake can generate a tsunami is by an abrupt seafloor deformation. This causes a vertical displacement of water which produces the wave. When these waves are still out in the open ocean, they are very small in height, but their wavelength can reach over 100 miles long, and they can travel well over 500 miles an hour across the open ocean. As the wave approaches the land, the depth of the water becomes more shallow, causing the wave to slow down and compress. The wave usually slows down to around 50 miles an hour, and its wavelength shortens to less than 10 miles, causing the height to grow enormously. This graph illustrates that phenomenon. As the wave is still out here in the open ocean, you can see that its height is not very high, but the wavelength is still very long. As it approaches and the land here and the depth gets more shallow, the wave compresses and the wavelengths becomes much shorter, causing the wave to become very tall. And as it approaches land and goes on land, this causes flooding and destruction. These tsunamis have caused major disaster and catastrophic loss of life throughout history. The worst recorded disaster of a tsunami was the one I mentioned earlier that happened in the Indian Ocean the day after Christmas in 2004. That tsunami was created by an underwater earthquake that occurred about 100 miles north off the coast of Sumatra at a depth of 19 miles below sea level. This quake was registered as a magnitude 9.2, which is a very, very powerful earthquake. This quake caused the waves that hit India's beaches to reach nearly 100 feet in height. The sad thing is that there was no tsunami warning in place. Many of the beachgoers in those areas had no idea at what was about to happen. At first, the ocean receded way out from the beach, and many of the people then ventured out thinking that that was pretty cool. But what was happening is a characteristic of a tsunami called a drawback. This occurs when the trough or negative peak of the wave arrives at shore first. This drawback does not last long though. Usually, within around 6 minutes, the wave comes on land and major flooding and destruction occurs. Then, in about another 6 minutes, the drawback happens again and can wash most of the debris and the victims out to sea. This cycle repeats itself several times before the tsunami eventually dies out. Though there were no warning systems in place in the Indian Ocean during that time, there are warning systems in place today. Some warning systems notify surrounding areas as soon as any earthquake near the ocean is detected. Other warning systems use what are called bottom pressure sensors, which are attached to buoys out in the open ocean. These sensors are constantly monitoring the pressures of the water column in that area. Strides have also been made in research to try to understand this phenomenon, but still much remains unknown. And most of the current research on tsunamis is focused on trying to understand why some large earthquakes do not produce tsunamis, but then some small quakes might produce a large tsunami. This knowledge can help save lives in the future. In some tsunami-prone countries, like Japan, they are taking steps to try and mitigate the damage that can be caused by a tsunami. Japan has developed and constructed tsunami walls. These walls are up to 40 feet high and are believed to be able to protect the populated coastal areas. Some other countries have built floodgates and channels to help relieve or redirect the water from the tsunami waves. These are very expensive projects and their effectiveness is very questionable. There have been cases where these walls have slowed down the tsunami slightly, but the waves still come right over the top of the walls and cause major destruction and loss of life. So as you can see, tsunamis are a real threat in some coastal areas, and more research needs to be done to further understand these things so that lives can be saved in the future.